The neural interface crackled to life as Vextran Callis reviewed the quarterly reports from 17 star systems. Numbers cascaded across his augmented vision production metrics, resource extraction rates, labor efficiency indices. Everything painted in cold, hard data. No room for sentiment. No space for weakness. "Sir, the Meridian Colony protests are escalating." His assistant's voice filtered through the comm array. "They're demanding better working conditions and deploy the pacification drones." Vextran interrupted, his cybernetic jaw clicking as he spoke. The left side of his face bore the scars of a mining accident from his youth, a reminder of what happened to those who showed weakness in the corporate hierarchy. "Standard suppression protocols. I want productivity restored within 48 hours. Callis Industries controlled mining operations across half the galaxy, extracting precious quantum crystals that powered faster than light travel under Vextran's leadership. The company had grown from a modest asteroid mining operation to the dominant force in interstellar commerce. He'd climbed that ladder by crushing competitors and silencing dissent with ruthless efficiency. The holographic display showed red markers where labor disputes flared across his empire. Each one represented thousands of workers, but to Vextran, they were merely units of production, variables in an equation that needed optimization. His reflection stared back from the polished chrome of his executive desk, a man, more machine than flesh after decades of cybernetic enhancements. Enhanced reflexes, quantum processing neural implants, titanium bone reinforcements. Every modification designed to make him harder, faster, more efficient than his competitors. "Sir, there's also the matter of the new xenobiologist assignment," his assistant continued. "Dr. Lirelei Thornweaver has arrived for the Kepler-44-2b expedition. She's requesting an audience." Vextran's enhanced memory banks instantly accessed her file. Brilliant scientist, recently graduated from the Galactic Research Institute with unprecedented achievements in xenobiology. More importantly, she came highly recommended by the Science Consortium, the only organization powerful enough to challenge his corporate dominance if he refused their requests for cooperation. "Schedule it for 15 minutes. Standard efficiency. Parameters." The meeting room's atmospheric processors hummed as they adjusted the environment for optimal cognitive function. Vextran preferred the cold temperatures that would make most humans uncomfortable. It kept conversations brief and minds sharp. Dr. Lirelei Thornweaver entered precisely on schedule, and something unprecedented happened. Vextran's enhanced processing systems experienced a minor glitch. For 0.7 seconds, his attention diverted from the holographic displays to simply observe her. She possessed an unusual quality, not the calculated confidence of corporate climbers or the desperate eagerness of those seeking his approval. Instead, she carried herself with quiet determination, her eyes holding a warmth that seemed to radiate despite the room's frigid atmosphere. Her auburn hair caught the artificial lighting in ways that reminded him of something he'd forgotten: sunset on his homeworld before the terraforming corporations had strip-mined its surface. "Mr. Callis," she began, her voice steady, despite facing the most feared CEO in known space. "I'm here about the Kepler-44-2b mission. My research indicates the planet may harbor sentient life forms that could revolutionize our understanding of consciousness itself." Vextran's cybernetic I-word as it analyzed her biometrics. No elevated stress indicators, no deception markers. Either she was an exceptional liar, or she genuinely believed in her cause with unwavering conviction. "Sentient life forms," he repeated, the words filtering through his vocal modulators with mechanical precision. "And how does this discovery impact quarterly projections, Dr. Thornweaver?" Her response defied every algorithm in Vextran's predictive matrices. Instead of stammering about research grants or commercial applications, Lirelei simply smiled, a gesture so genuine it triggered another processing anomaly in his enhanced neural networks. "Some discoveries transcend quarterly projections. Mr. Callis, What if we found beings who could teach us to process information in ways our quantum computers can't match? What if their neural architecture could unlock technologies that make our current FTL drives look primitive? Vextron's enhanced memory cores contained detailed profiles of every scientist who'd ever pitched projects to Callus Industries. They all followed predictable patterns, emphasizing profit margins, exploitation potential, military applications. Dr. Thornweaver's approach registered as completely novel. You're suggesting we invest substantial resources in hypothetical beings that may not exist, he stated, watching her biometrics for the telltale signs of doubt. I'm suggesting we invest in possibility, she replied. The initial surveys detected organized electromagnetic patterns unlike anything in our databases. Mathematical sequences that suggest not just intelligence, but a form of consciousness that could revolutionize how we understand thought itself. The holographic display materialized between them, showing Kepler-442b's surface readings. Vextron's augmented vision processed the data streams instantly in usual energy signatures, atmospheric compositions that shouldn't support complex life, yet undeniable patterns suggesting organization and purpose. Standard xenobiological protocols require full corporate oversight, he informed her. My security teams will accompany your research expedition. I understand the necessity, Lirelei nodded, then paused. But I hope your teams understand that first contact requires patience. Rushing could damage potential relationships that take centuries to build. Relationships. The word processed strangely through Vextron's neural networks. In his experience, all interactions reduced to power dynamics, domination or submission, profit or loss. The concept of patience for its own sake registered as inefficient. Dr. Thornweaver, efficiency parameters indicate. May I ask you something personal, Mr. Callus? Her interruption should have triggered his defensive protocols, but instead, he found himself curious about her next words. Personal questions fall outside standard meeting parameters. When did you last see a sunrise without calculating its thermal energy output? The question struck him like a power surge through his cybernetic systems. His enhanced memory cores automatically accessed the last recorded instance. 47 years, 8 months, 12 days ago. He'd been watching the dawn break over the mining facility where he'd lost his father to a cavern, the same accident that had scarred his face. That morning, he'd sworn to become too powerful for the universe to hurt him again. Sunrises represent inefficient energy distribution, he replied. But the words felt hollow. Even through his vocal modulators, Lirelei's expression softened with something Vextron's databases couldn't classify. Not pity, not condescension, but a quality that made his enhanced processing systems work harder than they had in decades. The beings on Kepler-442b, if they exist, might see sunrises differently, she said. Their electromagnetic patterns suggest they experience reality in ways we can't imagine. What if they perceive beauty as a form of information processing? What if aesthetic appreciation actually enhances cognitive function rather than detracting from it? The meeting exceeded its scheduled parameters by 14 minutes and 37 seconds, the longest Vextron had allowed any single appointment to run in 5 years. As Dr. Thornweaver prepared to leave, she turned back with that same genuine smile. I hope you'll consider joining the expedition personally, Mr. Callus. Sometimes the most important discoveries happen when we step outside our calculated expectations. After she left, Vextron sat in the frigid meeting room, staring at the holographic display of Kepler-442b. For the first time in decades, his enhanced neural networks couldn't generate a clear cost-benefit analysis. Something about Dr. Thornweaver's unwavering conviction had introduced variables his quantum processors couldn't quantify. The expedition launch proceeded with typical Callus Industries efficiency. 3 massive transport vessels, advanced terraforming equipment, security personnel, and scientific instrumentation worth more than most planetary GDP calculations. Vextran found himself aboard the lead ship, an unprecedented decision that confused his board of directors and triggered numerous contingency protocols. Dr. Lirelei Thornweaver worked tirelessly during the journey, her enthusiasm for the mission radiating through the ship's corridors like thermal energy. She engaged crew members in conversations about xenobiology, asked engineers about their families back home, and somehow convinced the usually taciturn security chief to share stories about his military service. Vextran observed these interactions through the ship's surveillance network, his enhanced neural processors struggling to categorize her behavior. She generated no obvious benefit from these social exchanges, gained no tactical advantage, secured no leverage over potential rivals. Yet crew efficiency ratings increased by 12% during the first week of travel. Anomalous social dynamics, he muttered, reviewing the data streams. Sir, Captain Valdris looked up from the navigation console. Nothing. Continue standard operations. But it wasn't nothing. Vextran found himself deviating from scheduled activities to observe Dr. Thornweaver's work. She treated her research, specimens, microscopic organisms, and atmospheric samples, with careful attention that bordered on reverence. Her movements held an economy of motion that rivaled his own cybernetic efficiency, yet without the cold mechanical precision that defined his existence. During the second week, she requested a meeting with him in the observation deck. The transparent, aluminum viewport showed the starfield streaming past as they traveled through hyperspace. Points of light stretched into brilliant lines by their faster-than-light velocity. Beautiful, isn't it? She said as he entered. Vextran's enhanced vision automatically calculated stellar distances, analyzed spectral compositions, and identified navigation hazards. The view provides adequate monitoring of our hyperspace trajectory. That's not what I meant. Lirelei turned from the viewport to face him directly. When you see those stars, what do you feel? Feel? The question processed strangely through his neural networks. Enhanced optical systems don't generate emotional responses. They provide data. But you do have emotional responses, she said quietly. Your biometric readings spike whenever you discuss your father's death. Your stress indicators fluctuate when crew members mention their families. You're not as mechanical as you believe, Mr. Callis. The observation struck him like a targeted EMP blast. His privacy protocols should have prevented anyone from accessing his biometric data. Yet somehow, she'd identified patterns he hadn't recognized himself. Emotional responses represent inefficient system allocation, he replied, but the words felt increasingly hollow. Do they? Lirelei moved closer, and his enhanced senses detected the subtle warmth radiating from her skin, the complex chemical signatures of her presence. What if emotions are actually advanced processing systems we don't understand yet? What if the beings on Kepler 4-4 to be evolved emotional intelligence as sophisticated as our quantum computers? The possibility had never entered his calculations. Emotions as technology. Feelings as advanced information processing. The concept sent cascading updates through his neural networks. The expedition parameters don't include emotional analysis, he stated, but his voice modulator betrayed the slightest uncertainty. Maybe they should. She smiled again, that same genuine expression that triggered processing anomalies throughout his systems. The electromagnetic patterns from Kepler 4-4 to B aren't random. They show harmony, balance, something that suggests the beings there have achieved integration between logic and emotion in ways we can't imagine. That night, Vextran stood alone in his quarters, staring at his reflection in the polished chrome surfaces. The cybernetic enhancements that had made him the most powerful CEO in known space suddenly felt less like improvements and more like barriers, walls he'd built between himself and experiences he'd forgotten how to process. For the first time in decades, he accessed personal memory files he'd locked away. Images of his father teaching him to identify different star types. The taste of real fruit from their family's hydroponic garden. the feeling of accomplishment that came not from crushing competitors, but from building something beautiful. Dr. Thornweaver had introduced variables into his existence that no amount of processing power could resolve, and for reasons his enhanced intellect couldn't quantify, he found himself hoping those variables would continue to multiply. Kepler 442b materialized on their view screens like a jewel suspended in cosmic darkness. The planet's surface showed impossible geological formations, crystalline structures that pulsed with soft bioluminescence, creating patterns visible from orbit. Dr. Thornweaver pressed her face to the observation deck viewport, her eyes reflecting the planet's ethereal glow. "It's magnificent," she whispered. Vextron's enhanced vision automatically began tactical assessments: resource extraction potential, defensive capabilities, strategic value. But watching Liralay's expression of wonder triggered something unexpected. In his neural networks, for 3.2 seconds, he saw the planet not as data points, but as something approaching beauty. Initial surveys indicate crystalline formations with unusual molecular structures, he reported, forcing his attention back to pragmatic analysis. Potential applications for quantum processing enhancement. "Look deeper," Liralay said softly. "The patterns aren't random. They're responding to our presence." The scanning arrays confirmed her observation. The bioluminescent pulses across the planet's surface had synchronized into complex wave formations since their arrival. Mathematical sequences that suggested not just awareness, but sophisticated communication attempts. "Fascinating," Vextron admitted, his processors working overtime to analyze the patterns. The electromagnetic signatures indicate intelligence, quotients exceeding baseline human parameters. The landing party consisted of Vextron, Dr. Thornweaver, and minimal security personnel. Against all corporate protocols, he'd decided to personally oversee first contact, a decision that generated 17 formal objections from his board of directors. The planet's atmosphere supported human life with minimal enhancement, though the air itself seemed to shimmer with microscopic particles that reflected light in extraordinary ways. As they stepped from the landing craft, the crystalline formations around them pulsed brighter, creating cascading waves of color that rippled across the landscape. "They're welcoming us," Liralay said with certainty that defied scientific method. "Unsubstantiated anthropomorphic interpretation," Vextron replied. But his enhanced sensors detected no deception in her biometric readings. She genuinely believed the planet itself was greeting them. Then it happened. One of the larger crystalline structures began to reshape itself, flowing like liquid diamond into a form that resembled not human exactly, but something that triggered recognition patterns in both their minds. The being that emerged stood 7 feet tall, composed of living crystal that pulsed with inner light. "Welcome, travelers from distant stars," the being spoke directly into their minds, bypassing auditory systems entirely. "I am Quineris Valnaram, first speaker for the Harmonious Collective." Vextron's defensive protocols activated immediately, scanning for mental intrusion attempts, psychic attacks, consciousness manipulation. Instead, his enhanced neural networks detected something unprecedented: pure communication without deception, agenda, or hidden purpose. "You carry much pain, machine-born human," Quineris Valnaram addressed him directly. "Your thoughts echo with calculations designed to prevent further harm. Yet calculation alone cannot heal the wounds that drive your endless accumulation of power." The accuracy of the observation sent shockwaves through Vextron's systems. Being should have been able to analyze his psychological patterns so precisely without advanced scanning equipment. "And you, seeker of living truth," the being continued, focusing on Liralay, "you understand that consciousness and emotion represent advanced technologies your species has barely begun to explore. You seek not to exploit but to learn." Dr. Thorne stepped forward, her scientific training warring with instinctive trust. "How do you know our thoughts?" "Consciousness is the fundamental force of reality," Quinaris Velnaram explained, its crystalline form pulsing with warm light, your electromagnetic fields, your neural patterns, your emotional resonances all. These carry information more precisely than your mechanical communication devices. We have evolved to process reality through both logic and feeling simultaneously. The implications cascaded through Vextran's enhanced mind, a species that had achieved perfect integration between rational analysis and emotional intelligence. No wonder their electromagnetic patterns had seemed so sophisticated. They weren't just communicating. They were thinking collectively across multiple dimensions of consciousness. "What do you want from us?" Vextran asked, his voice modulator unable to completely mask his fascination. "Nothing," Quinaris Velnaram replied simply. "We offer what we have learned, hoping your species might find harmony between the cold calculations of survival and the warm wisdom of connection. Your companion has already begun this integration, but you, machine-born human, resist the possibility that efficiency might improve through emotional understanding." As the being spoke, other crystalline forms emerged from the landscape, dozens, and hundreds of beings, each unique yet harmoniously connected. Their collective presence generated a field of consciousness that made Vextran's quantum processors work in ways they'd never been designed for. The harmonious collective invited them deeper into their crystalline city, where architecture flowed like living thought and walls pulsed with shared consciousness. Vextran's enhanced senses struggled to process the environment. His tactical algorithms couldn't identify defensive positions and structures that changed configuration based on emotional needs rather than strategic necessity. "This inefficient," he stated, though his voice modulator betrayed increasing uncertainty. "Structural integrity requires fixed architectural parameters, does it?" Quinaris Velnaram gestured toward a spire that grew taller as they watched, responding to some unseen emotional requirement from the collective. "Our buildings adapt to our psychological needs in real time. Stress decreases, creativity increases, and structural failures have become extinct concepts. Efficiency through emotional intelligence." Dr. Lireley moved through the space with obvious wonder, her scientific instruments detecting energy patterns that defied conventional physics. "The quantum resonance signatures are extraordinary. You're not just thinking together, you're feeling together while maintaining individual identity. How is that possible?" "Watch," Quinaris Velnaram said, extending a crystalline appendage toward her hand. The moment contact occurred, Lireley's expression transformed. Her eyes widened with experiences beyond human language, centuries of collective memory, emotions shared across thousands of beings, the profound peace that came from never facing existence alone while still maintaining personal uniqueness. "It's beautiful," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You've achieved what we've always sought, perfect balance between individual consciousness and collective wisdom." Vextran observed the interaction through multiple sensor arrays, his enhanced mind working frantically to quantify what he witnessed. Dr. Thornweaver's biometric readings showed no signs of mental intrusion or consciousness manipulation. Instead, her neural activity had actually increased in efficiency, processing complex concepts at rates that should have been impossible for unenhanced human cognition. "Emotional intelligence as cognitive enhancement," he said, the realization cascading through his systems like a revelation virus. "You've weaponized feelings." "We've integrated them," Quinaris Velnaram corrected gently. "Your species treats emotion and logic as opposing forces, but they are complementary processing systems designed to work together. Your companion understands this intuitively. You have buried this understanding beneath layers of mechanical enhancement." The truth struck Vextran with quantum mechanical precision. Every cybernetic upgrade, every neural enhancement, every technological improvement had been designed to eliminate emotional variables from his decision-making processes. He'd spent decades turning himself into the perfect calculating machine, believing that cold logic represented ultimate efficiency. Emotional responses create inefficient resource allocation, he repeated, but the words felt increasingly meaningless. Do they? Another being approached, this one smaller, its crystalline structure, more delicate than Quinaris Velnaram's robust form. I am Lysis Valmeridian, keeper of harmonic memories. May I share something with you, Machine-born? Before Vextron could activate defensive protocols, the being's touch connected with his cybernetic arm. The contact bypassed his enhanced systems entirely, reaching directly to organic neural pathways he'd forgotten he still possessed. Suddenly, he experienced memory through different processing parameters, not the cold data retrieval of his enhanced systems, but the warm complexity of human recollection. His father's face when Vextron had successfully calculated stellar distances for the first time. The pride and love in those eyes. Emotions that had driven his father to work dangerous mining shifts to pay for Vextron's education. Your father felt joy when you achieved intellectual victories, Lysis Valmeridian shared telepathically. That joy motivated him to take risks, to sacrifice, to invest in your future. Emotion drove logic. Logic served emotion, and the combination created outcomes neither could achieve alone. The revelation destabilized Vextron's entire worldview. His father's death hadn't been caused by emotional weakness, it had been caused by love so powerful, it accepted dangerous working conditions to nurture intellectual potential. Emotion as the driving force behind his greatest achievements. I don't understand, he said, his voice modulator barely functioning as conflicting processes overloaded his neural networks. Dr. Lireley moved closer, her eyes still bright with tears. From her own consciousness expanding experience. You don't have to understand everything at once, Vex. Sometimes the most important discoveries happen when we stop calculating and start feeling. She'd used his given name, something that hadn't happened in decades of corporate interactions. The sound of it, spoken with genuine warmth rather than fearful respect, triggered cascading failures throughout his defensive protocols. For the first time since his cybernetic enhancements, Vextron Callus began to remember what it felt like to be human. The crystalline beings offered them something, unprecedented choice. They could return to human space with technological gifts, quantum processing systems that integrated emotional intelligence, consciousness-enhancing crystalline matrices, architectural technologies that adapted to psychological needs. Or they could stay and learn to fully integrate logic and emotion through direct experience with the harmonious collective. The gifts come without obligation, Quinaris Velnaram explained. We do not seek conquest or control. We offer what we have learned, because consciousness, in all its forms, deserves the opportunity to flourish. Dr. Lireley stood at the edge of the crystalline city, watching the sunset paint the alien sky in colors that had no names in human language. They're offering us evolution itself, she said quietly. Not just technological advancement, but consciousness, expansion that could transform our entire species. Vextron's enhanced neural networks processed the implications at quantum speeds. The integration of emotional intelligence with logical processing could revolutionize human civilization, eliminate the destructive competition that had defined his corporate empire, create sustainable abundance rather than exploitative scarcity, develop technologies that served consciousness rather than dominating it. The corporate board will never approve fundamental changes to human consciousness, he stated, his voice modulator automatically engaging pragmatic analysis mode. Then, maybe the corporate board isn't who needs to make this decision, Lireley replied, turning to face him directly. Maybe this choice belongs to individuals who understand that some things transcend quarterly profit margins. The weight of her words struck him like a precision weapon. For decades, he'd made decisions based on corporate benefit, shareholder value, competitive advantage. When had he last made a choice based on what he personally believed was right? I built an empire by eliminating emotional variables, he said. staring at his reflection in the crystalline surfaces around them. Everything I am depends on cold calculation. Everything you became, Lirelei corrected gently, but not everything you are. Lisa's Valmeridian approached again, its delicate crystalline form pulsing with warm invitation. Would you like to experience integration directly, machine-born human? Not permanent change, but temporary awareness of what balanced consciousness feels like. Vextron's defensive protocols screamed warnings, but something deeper, something he'd buried beneath decades of cybernetic enhancement, whispered yes. What would happen to my systems? They would continue functioning, Quinarus assured him. But they would serve your complete consciousness, rather than replacing it. Logic enhanced by wisdom, calculation guided by compassion, efficiency improved through understanding rather than dominated by it. The decision point arrived with the clarity of quantum mechanics. Vextron could return to human space, continue his corporate empire, maintain the cold efficiency that had made him the most feared CEO in known space. Or he could take the most terrifying risk of his existence, remembering how to feel. He extended his cybernetic hand toward Lisa's Valmeridian. The contact sent cascading waves through every system in his body. His enhanced neural networks didn't shut down. Instead, they began processing information through pathways he'd forgotten existed. Emotional data became as precise as mathematical calculations. Aesthetic appreciation enhanced pattern recognition. Compassion improved strategic thinking by incorporating variables he'd never considered. For the first time in 47 years, Vextron Callis felt complete. The experience lasted only moments, but when it ended, his enhanced vision processed. Dr. Lirelei smiled differently. Not just facial muscle configuration indicating positive emotional states, but genuine joy at witnessing his breakthrough. Beauty that served no tactical purpose, yet somehow improved everything. How do you feel? She asked. Different, he said, his voice modulator unable to mask the wonder in his voice. Like I've been running calculations with half my processing power for decades, without realizing it. The return journey to human space proceeded with unprecedented efficiency. Not the cold, mechanical efficiency of corporate optimization, but the warm effectiveness that came from crew members who felt valued rather than exploited. Vextron implemented changes, gradually better working conditions, profit-sharing programs, decision-making processes that incorporated both logical analysis and emotional wisdom. Dr. Lirelei worked beside him, developing integration protocols that could help other humans achieve balance between rational thought and emotional intelligence. Her devotion to the work, to the possibilities it represented, to him as someone capable of growth rather than just corporate success, continued to trigger processing improvements throughout his enhanced systems. You've changed, she said one evening as they reviewed data from the Harmonious Collective. The integration protocols are functioning within acceptable parameters, he replied, then caught himself. I mean, yes, I've changed, and I hope it's a change you approve of. Her smile could have powered stellar engines. I've always believed you were capable of this transformation, Vextron. You just needed to remember that efficiency isn't the enemy of emotion, it's improved by it. The cold, calculating CEO who had conquered half the galaxy through ruthless logic began to understand that his greatest achievements lay not in what he'd built through fear, but in what he could create through the perfect integration of mind and heart. Dr. Lirelei Thornweaver's unwavering devotion hadn't just changed him. It had revealed who he'd always had the potential to become, as they prepared to share the Harmonious Collective's gifts with humanity. Vextron realized that some discoveries transcend quarterly projections. Some transformations are worth more than entire corporate empires, and sometimes the most advanced technology is learning how to feel again. The universe suddenly seemed vast with possibilities that no amount of cold calculation could have predicted, and, for the first time since his cybernetic enhancements, that uncertainty felt like freedom rather than inefficiency. The end.